around the 19th century, when the British were coming into India and the Mughal Empire was coming to an end, poets like Mirza Ghalib started using a lot of Persian words in Urdu. So suddenly, Urdu language, which was the language of the soldiers, the common soldier, started having more and more Persian influence. And people are, during the partition, when Hindus and Muslims were fighting, they said, oh, this is a Muslim language. So Urdu, which was used by common soldiers to talk to each other, suddenly became a Muslim language.
You must have often heard the terms like official language, classical language, and so many other concepts and themes around the topic of language. What are these? Let's dive deep into the topic of language in our today's show of Art and Culture with Devdutt Pattanaik. Hello everyone, I am Manas Srivastava and I welcome you once again to our show Art and Culture with Devdutt Pattanaik. Now, as you all know that in this particular show, we talk about a lot of concepts, the topics, the themes around the subject of art and culture. In the previous episode, we talked about some basic concepts around scripts and languages. Today, we'll go in a little more detail. We'll dive deep into the topic of language. Let me begin with the first question. Devdutt, the first question which I want to ask you is around this concept that we live in a country of diversity. We have so many things, there's so many languages, there are so many families of languages. So what are these families of languages and what are these various avatars of languages, if you can throw some light?
What are the Indian language families and their avatars? So, I write about it in my book. This is my book, and I write chapters on languages, as you can see. And as I've written in this book, there are different language families in India. There is the Indo-Aryan language of families, which are derived from Sanskrit and are connected to languages in Persia and faraway Europe too. This is the dominant language group in India, found mostly in the northern part of India. In the southern part of India, we have another language group, which is called Dravidian languages. And that is the second largest group in India. So the northern languages like Hindi, Punjabi, Gujarati, Rajasthani, these languages come in the Indo-Aryan group. Tamil, Telugu, Kannada comes in the Dravidian language groups. In between are languages like Odia and Marathi, which are a mix of the two. In the eastern part of India, you have a Magadhi group of languages, which is not yet considered a new language group, but people are arguing that there is a new language group called the Magadhi languages, which are found in Bihar, in Odisha, in Assam, because you have certain grammatical things, but this is not official yet. Then, if you go further to the northeast India, you suddenly find influence from China that is called the Sino-Tibetan language group. This language is intonation. So, the sound intonation, matlab, if you're saying hello, 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 so this is intonation, and this will have different meanings, which is a peculiar feature of the Chinese language. And then there is Austroasiaticus languages. Lots of tribal groups in India speak what is called Munda languages. They come from Austroasiaticus, which is an influence which comes from Southeast Asia. So you have these language groups in India: Indo-Aryan, Dravidian, Sino-Tibetan from China, and Austroasiaticus, which comes from Southeast Asia, reverse movement. And then there is this Magadhan language, which people are now talking about.
Thank you, Devdutt, for talking to us about this diversity, about this family of languages. I'm sure students would be able to grasp a few of them and would understand them as a marker of diversity, which is very important to know. Now let's come to another important concept or important term which we come across when we talk about languages in our country, and I'm talking about the term classical language. So if you can talk to us about classical languages, what are they, why are they important?
So what is a classical language? A classical language is something that has existed in the country for over 1,000 years. It must be an original language and must have a body of literature that is still revered and respected today, and the language is still spoken today. Classical languages in India include Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, Telugu, Odia. And the importance of this is that the government makes a lot of efforts to protect these languages. University Grants Commission gives money so that this language can be recorded, documented, studied, and centers of excellence are established to ensure this language is maintained and is not forgotten, and its literature is documented properly. So that's why classical language is the language which government pays a lot of attention to, because it has a very long history of literature. So 800-year-old works, 600-year-old works, 500-year-old works. There are poets, there are writers, there are stories, there are epics, and that must be preserved.
So, if we've talked about classical languages, there's another important term which comes in our mind, which is official language. Sometimes we also talk about national language. So, what do you have to tell our students about it?
So we have heard about classical languages, but what about official languages? Now, does India have a national language? Like, does 100% of India speak the same language? Well, not really. 30-40% may speak Hindi, but that's not a national language. 20% may speak English, that's not a national language. So what is an official language? Official language is a language of the government, in which what in old days were called the court language, the language used by the king's court, by the legal courts. And in India, English remains the official language. Hindi is used as official language at Delhi at the central level, but every state has its own official language. So in Maharashtra, Marathi is used, in Odisha, Odia is used, in Tamil Nadu, Tamil is used, in Kannada is used in Karnataka, and that becomes important. Right? So this is a contentious issue in our country, and they often ask questions on this. But it's important to remember that India is too diverse a country to have one language connecting everything. It's nice theory, but in practice, you need to have multiple languages.
Thank you so much, Devdutt, for explaining our students about official language, the national language, and in the previous answer when you talked about classical language. Now, students should know that when you are reading so much about the debate around national language, the official language, and so on and so forth, in your newspaper, in editorials, in opinion, remember when you're writing an answer, and when you're coming to the conclusion of the answer, the last line which Devdutt says is a very important and a beautiful line, that India is a country of diversity and multiple languages is its reality. Okay, so this is a good line to end in the conclusion when you're talking about for and against of a particular debate or a topic. Now let's move on from here and let's talk about another important and much talked about topic or subject, which is the Urdu language. Okay, so Devdutt, if you can talk about Urdu language and how did it come became a part of our Indian culture.
So people want to know a lot about Urdu and Hindi. Now, if you lived 1,000 years ago, both these languages did not exist. There is no such thing as a Hindi language 1,000 years ago. If you went towards Bihar, they would speak Maithili. In Uttar Pradesh, they would speak Bhojpuri. They would speak Awadhi near Lucknow. They would speak Braj Bhasha near Mathura. There's Mewadi in Mewar, Marwadi in Rajasthan. So there are different dialects. And today, of course, these languages are sort of overshadowed by something called Hindi, which comes from an older language called Hindavi, which was spoken in the region we now call Haryana, Kurukshetra, Panipat. This is the region where Hindavi language was spoken. This is where when the Turks and the Afghans came into India, they established the Delhi Sultanate over here, and a small village called Delhi suddenly became very important. And you have this new group of people who spoke languages based on Turki, Farsi, Afghan. These new languages came into India, and they had to control India, and therefore they needed a language, and it became a military language emerged, a language of the barracks, which, the soldiers were fighting from North India to South India, east to west. They had sultanates in Gujarat, sultanates in Bengal, there were sultanates in Maharashtra, there were the Nizams of Hyderabad, then the Mughal Empire emerged, and therefore different languages, people had to be brought together to work together. And in the military camps, that is in the barracks, language emerged which came to mean as Urdu, or the language of the soldiers, or the language of the barracks, or the language of the military. And that Urdu word started being used कि ये भाषा है जो soldiers use करते हैं. ऐसे Urdu शब्द came into being. Now this word in around the 19th century, when the British were coming into India and the Mughal Empire was coming to an end, poets like Mirza Ghalib started using a lot of Persian words in Urdu. So suddenly Urdu language, which was the language of the soldiers, the common soldier, started having more and more Persian influence. And people are, during the partition, when Hindus and Muslims were fighting, they said, oh, this is a Muslim language. So Urdu, which was used by common soldiers to talk to each other, suddenly became a Muslim language. And people said we need a Hindu language, and therefore this Urdu, lots of Sanskrit words started being used, and Hindi as a language emerged. So if you find a strong Sanskrit influence, it becomes Hindi. If you have a strong Persian influence, Urdu becomes proper Urdu, which is spoken in Pakistan. Sadly, in Pakistan, Urdu gets more importance than the local languages like Punjabi, Sindhi, Baluchi, which is very tragic. In India, people are trying to use Hindi to dominate local languages, Braj Bhasha, Awadhi, Bhojpuri, Maithili. And these are questions to be like Bihar. What is the language of Bihar? Bihar had so many dialects, but now everybody assumes Hindi is the language of Bihar. So this is how languages change over time. It has to deal with politics, with popularity. Now, of course, Hinglish is emerging, which is a mix of English and Hindi.
One important takeaway from your last answer is definitely when you say that languages are, changing over time. So there is a concept of change and continuity, as we have seen in various other topics of art and culture. It's present in language also. And when you talk about the present day use of English, okay, and how it has also become a part of modern day culture. So languages, as other elements of art and culture, are also changing with time, something which you must remember. And if you have seen our previous episodes, we've talked about the concept of time and space, with respect to various topics of art and culture. What is that concept of time and space, which Devdutt uses quite often? You can mention in the comment box below. Let's move on. And let us come to a topic which is often related to languages, which is the assimilation of language. I'm sure students must have read it, students must have heard about it. Devdutt, if you want to talk about assimilation of languages.
Assimilation of languages. When two people meet, they have to talk to each other, right? And I don't know your language, you don't know my language, and we start talking languages. And a Creole word is used when, you use words from different, just to communicate with each other. Pidgin language, Creole languages, these are words used for when strangers meet and try to communicate with each other. So imagine you meet a French person, how will you talk to them? We use gestures and gradually start using common words. For example, in Nagaland, the word Nagaland, we use this word. There's something called Nagamese, a language which is used in the eastern part of India, so northeastern part of India, amongst all the 7 sisters of Northeast India. How do they talk to each other? Do they use English? Do they use Hindi? Do they use Nagamese, which is a mixture of Assamese and local dialects to create a common language, the way Urdu emerged in the barracks in the medieval times? So Nagamese is the language which is used in Northeast India to communicate between the different tribes and communities. Mix some English words, some Hindi words, some Assamese words. It's like all languages are mixing together because the point is to communicate. right? So communication demands assimilation of languages. When you will notice that when Bengali people speak Hindi, they use grammar of Bengali but vocabulary of Hindi. So there's grammar from one language, nouns are used from one language, verbs are used from another language. So Bengali people, when they speak Hindi, they don't use gender, because in Bengali language, when you speak, in Odia, when you speak, verbs don't have a gender. So I'll say mu khauchi in Odia, I'm eating. But in Hindi, I'll say main kha raha hu, clarifying I'm a man. If it's a woman, will say main kha rahi hu. This is not found in Odia. This is not found in Bengali. So when a Bengali and Hindi speaker starts speaking in when a Bengali and Odia speaker speaks Hindi, they use the Bengali and Odia grammar with Hindi words, which creates a little bit of confusion and even humor. So that's assimilation of languages, important in a diverse and dynamic society.
All right, then, that is, I think, very beautifully explained. Students should keep in mind that any topic which we are dealing in, it's not just facts. Okay, we need to see around us what is happening. These concepts, like the previous concept about assimilation of language, uh, this is a more analytical topic, and you need to know about these things when you're dealing with a topic in general. Okay, and that is in sync with what the UPSC examination is becoming. Okay, it's not just related to facts, it's also about observation, it's about analysis, how updated you are with knowledge. So keep that in mind. And before going towards the end of the show, let's take Devdutt's important point to ponder.
So point to ponder. We have been discussing languages, but what about writing? How did it emerge, and what is the benefit of writing? Why do Indians prefer talking to writing? Think about it until we meet next time.
So that is the point to ponder by Devdutt Pattanaik. Dear aspirants, if you really like our show, do comment in the box below. You can also send questions to us, which we will take up with Devdutt Pattanaik in our upcoming episodes. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, and remain updated with all such kind of videos which we do at the Indian Express. Remember that every Wednesday at 8 p.m. I am live with your queries on YouTube and Instagram, so do join us there. Think smart, work hard, conquer your goal.